Well, the more I watch these press conferences, the more excited I get. And I swear by the time the Penn State game rolls around, I'm going to work myself up to a coronary or at least frothing at the mouth or something. Oh, wow. I heard from head coach Neil Brown and offensive line coach Matt Moore. And good stuff coming up. And also, you're going to get to hear me say, oops, I was wrong. But I'll put that off just long enough to say this is WVU football going deep. I am Forrest Poston, which may be an oops, but it is right. And I appreciate you watching. I do hope you will share, subscribe. Pardon me while I rescue my cheese from Raucous. Tell your friends. Make comments, click the thumbs up, and click the notification bell. Pardon me. Didn't rescue all my cheese. Gotta share. Yeah, share. Now, I was wrong. Yes, I was. I made a big point about some of the ways that I thought I had been right, including Rodney Gallagher's experiment on defense. I said that he would not play defense this season unless it just became necessary. Well, Shadon Brown mentioned having a few special packages for Gallagher, and today Neil Brown said that Rodney Gallagher will play some snaps on defense. Yep, that was a spam call. I'll probably be getting a spam voicemail in just a moment. Meanwhile, Rodney Gallagher will be playing some snaps on defense. They did not work him on defense the first few practices, but he said they're going to be doing that more extensively the rest of camp. So we'll see how that plays out. Some general things. I said, emphasizing red zone offense almost every practice because they weren't good enough last year. Percentage of touchdowns scored was too low. Got to improve. You work on it. Mentioned this Saturday they will scrimmage. So, of course, they will know a lot more after that, and I would expect to have some particularly interesting press conferences after that scrimmage. We just had recently the Family and Fan Day, and over 500 family members there for a dinner. That's quite a dinner. And it just emphasizes, how big Neil Brown is on the family atmosphere, the culture, more than just what happens on the field. Some coaches do things differently. Saw a coach they had a video first practice, the talking before practice, and he asked, players what they had done during the break. Nobody wanted to talk. He had to specifically call on players. When the player said he went home, the coach had to say, "Where's that?" I kind of think Neil Brown knows the home of every player except maybe the freshmen and walk-ons. Anyway, also he said, if you take West Virginia's record last year, including a good bowl win, their record in a Power Four conference, if it was just a blind resume, any team with that record would be listed, and also, returning players, that sort of thing, any team would be listed in the top 25, just based strictly on record if they didn't know which team it was. Well, that's a way of saying West Virginia is getting disrespected again. Notes on particular players. Specified he is impressed with Garnes and Hollis. We are hearing that repeatedly. He also mentioned how strong Garnes is, pound for pound. Hollis particularly has the ability to press, something that we haven't had. And again, that means we'll be seeing more man coverage. We'll be seeing more blitzing because the corners can handle it. Moving Burks around between spear and safety, and especially, there will be times when they probably use 3 linebackers. They, of course, now have the talent to do that. They've got linebackers with enough speed to move to the outside in something that is more or less the spear position, and then Burks moves back to safety. They've mentioned a couple of times Carrico's speed, so he might be the top pick for that. But yeah, I've said several times the defense is going to be shifting a lot this season. They're going to need to hire 3 or 4 people in the announcing booth just to keep track of who's on the field, but they won't do it. Notes on some injuries. Lathan was out with a hand or wrist injury, should be back Friday. Wilson out, said back soon. Noted with Wilson how much he's improved, and a couple of really good open field tackles so far in camp against Jaheim White. And open field tackles against Jaheim White are not easy to do. But he said need more consistency from the other guys in the defensive backfield. Well, hey, it's early fall camp. I'm not too worried about that. But it's not like he's not saying everything is coming up roses. We still have things to work on. He didn't seem especially concerned. I don't feel especially concerned. We've got tons of talent. It'll come together. Also mentioned Keon Washington as a pleasant surprise. That's one of the guys Shadon Brown had picked out. So when you start hearing things more than once and from more than one coach, you figure there's something to it. With the offense, I said basically you do have to evolve year to year. You can't do the same thing the same way because teams do pay attention. There are what he called core principles. Core principles for the running game, core for the passing game, but then you work with those principles to show them in a lot of different ways. Now, that's the tricky thing, that flexibility, as with Harrell and some others who have this idea of you have 5 plays that you run, you just make it look different. If you don't make it look different, teams figure out what's coming anyway. So core principles is a little more complex than just having like 5 plays that you run. But it will be interesting to see the wrinkles that they add. And they are always working on adding things. He said, they have access to film of pretty much every NFL and college game out there. So if they want to find an example of a play, they can find it. And then if you find something that works for you, you figure out how to fit it in and work from there. So we're still a run-first team, but have to have the passing game that matches, the run game. Likes the wide receiver room. So, the guys from last year have all made a step. The younger guys essentially made the kinds of steps you expect. Mentioned Preston Fox has gotten significantly stronger. And Fox has always been one of those guys you got to root for. So, all right. Day Farmer, had not heard a lot about him yet. He did sit out a couple of days, but he is elite with the ball in his hands, stronger than he looks. He can block if need be. Now last year, Gallagher was all willing to block. The difference between Gallagher last year, Farmer this year, Gallagher had not played receiver. He had to learn the position. He had to learn the route trees. I said with Farmer, the guys down in Florida, they're playing 7-on-7 all year round. They know route trees. They know being a receiver. What he has to learn is how to get off the line. Being familiar with all of the pre-snap action. A lot of what Gallagher had to learn, and in some respects what's the most complex potentially, Farmer already knows. So don't try to make too many comparisons. Gallagher is still coming along just as he should. He will be just as exciting as we hoped. Farmer will probably do more in his first year than Gallagher did. Brown said Farmer is expected to get playing time this year. Physically, just because of that strength. So, currently only about 160 pounds, will probably be about 170 when the season starts, but it is a strong body, and that's one of the things you need to get off the line. So physically, he's ready. Another thing I've talked about, Brown as teacher, he said, explaining why they do things. You have to keep explaining why. In this case, talking about why this camp, this summer, has been especially hard. Why they have worked harder, pushed more. Everybody keeps talking about it being a tough schedule. Brown agrees. If they are going to be ready for this schedule, they have to prepare now. On the one hand, each game you got to focus week to week. You can't think ahead in terms of what team you're playing. But thinking ahead now to be ready physically and mentally for November. You prep now to be ready then. So, okay guys, those of you who are worried about the schedule, there is part of Coach Brown's response. He's not ignoring things. He knows how to get ready. I think it'll work. Some other people don't seem to think as much. Also talked a lot about Coach Scott. Brown calls the plays. Scott is extensively involved in the offense. These guys work as a team. Well, all the offensive coaches do, but Brown, Scott, and Moore have they've coached together for a long, long time. Scott leads the offensive room each meeting. He's the one. He's great at motivation. Brown has his own way of motivating. He doesn't look exciting in press conferences, but he does know how to motivate. He does understand the importance of motivation, and he understands that a certain type of motivation is not his strength. So he has somebody who can do that. Primarily right now, that is Coach Scott. They do a lot of work together to come up with ideas, put together ideas. Scott is the one who kind of coordinates all that, especially what's coming in from the younger guys like Stewart, Marshall, and now, the guys who were graduate assistants and analysts are now coaches. I guess a lot of guys now have new titles showing that they are coaches. But you've got information coming in from a lot of sources. Brown wants that. He knows these guys are good. They're young, but they're good. So he wants their input. But you can't have everybody trying to, tell Coach Brown what they're thinking. So Scott brings all that into order, and then they work with it. And he specified, he expects, Scott to be a head coach and a successful head coach. And that's the sort of thing I am both happy and sad to hear, because I want him to be a successful head coach, but I also want him to be the WVU offensive coordinator. And we're just not going to be able to have that forever. He's too good. I think, if we're lucky to keep him past this year, we'll be dang lucky. But I do think we have guys who are also ready to move up. And if they're going to move up at WVU, somebody has to make way. That I will root for Chad Scott wherever he's coaching, as long as he is not playing WVU. Meanwhile, Matt Moore. Matt Moore typically gives interesting press conferences in terms of the information and observations, but not necessarily the most exciting. Today, different. Matt Moore just looked different, sounded different, more excited, happier, not worried. You did not see any signs of strain. He looked healthier, for that matter. It was a very different presentation. I suspect part of that is because of what he has to work with. He pointed out this, for the top 10 offensive linemen, this is the best, most ready room he has had since he's been here. He's got 9 or 10 guys right now that he feels like he could put in there if he had to. He's not necessarily planning to just keep rotating. He is preparing if need be, but he's got guys who can play. Also, having all of these other coaches, he is not having to try to do everything. And that includes being able to break it down so that you have one of the younger coaches coaching younger players who need fundamentals. And then basically it is, the advanced techniques, as you work up, there's a different coach teaching different techniques. And you have, the players who need the fundamentals are in one room. The most advanced players are in one room, and the guys in between are in 1 or 2 rooms, whatever. But you can focus on what each guy needs. Huge difference for him. So, it was fun to watch him. He's obviously having fun. I don't know how often you see a coach who looks like he's having fun. Players, yeah, sometimes. Coaches, not that often. Basically, he feels great about the left side. Who doesn't? We got Milam and we got Remack. Yates getting better every day. Hubbard, the best he has been. And Hubbard has, kind of literally worked his butt off and his stomach. And, he's understood what's needed, and he's gotten better at working. He's always worked hard, but he works hard and better. So he gets better. Malone sometimes thinks too much. Smart guy, hey, sometimes it's a problem. Can't shut the brain off. Or tone it down. You don't want to shut it off. An offensive lineman needs to be smart. Needs to be more consistent, keeping his pad level down. But he also said Malone runs better than Wyatt Milam. So there are going to be things on this line that they can do better this year than last year. Now with Milam, he's an elite among college tackles. If he wants to be elite, next thing to work on is, pass protection for an outside rush, like 3rd and long. Now, last video I talked about teams might try to, blitz from wide on Milam's side. Well, that's not exactly what Moore was talking about. He's also just talking about, a really elite edge rusher. And he said, Penn State, Milam will be up against possibly the best edge rusher in college football. But it's not that Milam is bad at this. It's just if you're going to pick something to work on, that's it. And he said Milam is one of those guys you have to work to find something for him to work on. And just keep finding ways to say, get better at this. You're great at this. Get greater. Meanwhile, the offensive line overall, and I think I saw something about this before, had forgotten, PFF rating for the fewest unblocked defensive rushers, linemen, getting hat on hat. West Virginia has been in the top 3 the last 2 years. So the communication, getting your blocking assignments right, they have been elite. Top 3 put you in dang elite country. I don't know who the others are up there. But communication is the number one thing. If you get a hat on a hat, you got a chance. So that is what we'll be looking for. Want to be top 3 again this year. Working very specifically in how he rotates players in, because you not only want everybody to be ready to play, you want them to be ready to play together. So he tracks, how many times has this guy played beside this guy? Has Weidman played next to Milam enough? So he is very detail-oriented, and this really is next level, because before you were just trying to have guys who were ready, period, and mostly moving somebody like Malone from place to place. Now working on not only having guys ready, but guys ready to play next to guys. Note on Livingston, weight is up where it needs to be. That has been an issue for Livingston. But he says finally weight is there, and he says Livingston is making a run. I think a lot of people have kind of been down on Livingston, just thinking he was never going to be good enough. Sounds like he could be good enough. And he is the guy expected to step in if Yates has issues or Yates needs a break. So he'd better be good enough. Nick Crave has really developed his body. He came in, light. Is now, over 300 pounds. Bosley, he said, has reshaped his body. That was one of the things. Strong enough to play at Jacksonville State is not necessarily strong enough to play Power 4. So Bosley is making a push. Last year, we had to be good at running. Just did not know how other parts of the offense were going to work out. So we had to be good at running. This year, he feels good about the entire offense. He knows what we have, including wide receivers. And he particularly pointed out the blocking that the wide receivers are doing. and that is seriously underrated for wide receivers. He said, the difference between a good run and a great run is downfield blocking by wide receivers. They're doing it. Now, they were working on it last year. Several of them were good at it. Some were trying to be good at it. We had a couple who didn't quite seem to get the concept. This year, it's a thing. So I don't know that, we'll get any TV, replays showing, hey, look at this wide receiver block, but you keep your eyes open, you ought to be seeing some good things there. Hey, guess what? He mentioned Gregory Genros. Said Genros looks great. Now, his weight is probably not quite where you want it to be for a power forward tight end. So he may be primarily a receiving tight end, but he knows how to block. He may need some more strength, but he knows how to block. So expect to see Genros, and that may be, especially down in the red zone. God, we get Robinson, Genros, and Taylor all in the game, and you're talking three guys who are 6'5" or taller. Oh, that's got to worry defenses. Talking about what he wants in an offensive lineman, something might be different from, say, a linebacker or defensive lineman. He wants guys not emotional. They don't have highs and lows. Whatever their best playing level is, that is what they do, play after play after play. Yes, and no getting down after you miss a block or get beat. You got to stay focused and level. Also, no ego. And he said these guys are great for that. Said, if somebody beats you out for the spot, the guy who got beat is still coaching up the guy who beat him. Which also means these guys have different knowledge to share, and they're sharing it. So good stuff there. One of the shortcomings of the Rich Rodriguez offense, and I know a lot of people don't think there were any shortcomings, but one of the shortcomings, and it cost us that Pitt game, was one style of blocking. There was one offense. It worked or it didn't. Moore says basically they learn inside zone, outside zone, and gap blocking. So potentially three different styles or emphases on the offense. And he specified, he said, BYU, they had great success with the outside zone, so they ran it over 300 yards. Cincinnati was ready for it, so they did gap blocking and ran for over 300 yards. Now, outside zone does require a more athletic line, guys who can run. And that is what we should be better at this year. Nestor, Frazier, these were very good linemen, elite in Frazier's case. But side to side was not their strength. For Yates, that is his strength, and for Malone, that might be his strength. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to do all outside zone, because some teams will be better against outside zone, and we have to be able to run what the defense isn't ready for or isn't as good at. We have to be able to run all three of these styles equally well. Actually, I think that's it. I thought I had more. But dang, just hearing Matt Moore's presentation, go watch that press conference. Coach Brown, I mean, he's fascinating in terms of the information. He's not going to be appearing on Broadway or anything like that anytime soon. Normally, I'd say the same thing about Matt Moore, but man, today he was electric. He was electric. That man is excited. And when you see a coach that excited, you gotta be excited for the season. Man, I'm excited. And hey, I think I'll go listen to the Pointer Sisters. They did a great version of I'm So Excited. Might be my theme song for the rest of the month, and hopefully after the Penn State game. Well, we will be having more press conferences, and I will be thinking about other possible subjects to do videos on, give myself a chance to talk, and possibly give myself another chance to say, oops, I was wrong, because, you know, that does happen. Dang it, it happens. Anyway, thanks for dropping in. Please come back. Please tell all those friends of yours to come on over and remind them to subscribe. So long.